Well, would you consider how you're pruning your trees? Is that like a standard? Are you using the old-fashioned standard cider orchard approach, or what's your approach?
Well, what we use is actually quite a modern approach that's been brought back from a long time ago. So if you were trying to summarize what we're doing, it's called a narrow canopy pruning system, which means you end up with a tree that looks somewhere between, depending on which tree you talk about, but it could be either shaped like a Christmas tree, or it could look like a column, or it might look a bit more like a half-open umbrella, which is a funny concoction of styles. But what it effectively means is you don't have a center space, you don't have an open-centered tree. And the next question would probably be, I'm guessing, why? Why do we do that?
Well,
Why don't we
before
adopt
we
it?
go there, I'm trying to, because I've got the pictures that I took with your more mature trees.
Yeah, I can
And
always send you more actually sorry, if you want more.
yeah,
I've got
okay,
loads
so
of pictures.
in my mind's eye, we know you're not doing open center.
No.
We know you're also not really doing central leader like the American style, where you've got one central leader, you've got a number of platforms or tiers, and in between there's lots of air circulation because your canopy is so narrow. And when it's a central leader approach, um, you would have lots of air circulation before the tier, between the tiers, and let's say up to three tiers. That's not your approach, right? It's not the
Well,
central leader.
it could be. It depends on what you see with pears, they naturally want to grow in the way that you've just described. So with pears, it's very easy for us with a lot of the pears, not all of them, because remember we have hundreds of different types. But some of the pears, like the Perry pears, want to grow like a column and they like to give you platforms, they like to have tiers, and it's really easy to keep them as a column. If you're talking about something like a warden pear, some of the warden pears want to become more bushy. So you can still keep the column narrow, but you get lots of growth all around. Now, I was reading because I've been doing lots of reading up and research into cherries because we're planting a lot of cherries. Cherries don't lend themselves to um, that kind of column shape. But what they do lend themselves to is fan training, which we know about, or possibly an older style called the pyramid pruning style. And the pyramid is another style we use a lot, which it looks effectively like a cone from a distance. So it's wider at the bottom, narrow at the top. And the reason it works, and it was talked about by a guy called Thomas Rivers, who was a very famous nurseryman who actually bred cherries. And he spoke about when he planted Morello cherries, which are notorious for getting very long, spindly branches after a few years, and they lose all of their vitality and all the fruits are at the end. So pruning is always a bit of a tricky thing because when you prune them, you end up destroying them quite often. Morellos can have quite a short life. So what he said he did, and this is what we do, is he pinches them back in the summer to make them into a sort of he described it as a kind of pyramid. And he said, you don't get the dieback, you don't get the bare branches, you get blossom at the end continuously every year, and they're very easy to maintain, which is a very interesting statement from somebody from the 1850s, I think it was.
Okay, I'm going to backtrack. We were talking about pears, and I was putting inside because
Hmm.
I we took pictures when I was there. I was looking at your apple trees, and they
Yeah,
were also very narrow.
yeah.
So, I'm just going to backtrack for a second. Are you planting
Hmm.
whips or feathers?
We plant both. We plant what the suppliers supply us. A lot of what we've just been planting in the last few months, well, since November, we've planted almost exclusively whips, apple whips, a few pears, but almost all whips, pot grown, 1 year old grafted on
Pot
triple
grown.
one. Pot
Okay.
grown, yeah, yeah. Grown
What?
for us, grafted for us.
Okay. Okay. So you're planting whips. Are you doing a whip cut in the first year? Or are you just
No,
planting and you're not doing a whip cut right away?
we don't do. I mean, when we've planted those whips, we literally, the only pruning that I do on those trees, obviously, if there's a snap branch or something later on, I'll take that off in the summer. But the only pruning that I do religiously for the first sort of 4 or 5 years is cut all the blossom off.
Okay.
And it's difficult because it's inside the tube sometimes. So I have to reach down with a blade stuck on the end of a bamboo cane and cut them all off. That's
The
really important
blossoms.
pruning. cut all the blossom off. Very, very important, critical.
Okay.
If you don't do that, you really have problems.
Okay. So you're planting a whip, you put them in the tube right away, right?
Yeah, they're
You're
in those open tubes with the holes in. You know,
the
my
open
my
tubes with the
special tubes.
holes.
Yeah,
So it's a whip, it's not tall. If there's
no,
any branches that start to, it's going to have the auxin hormone, it's going to want to go straight up and down. But if there's some
yeah,
side branching, can they poke through the cone,
yeah.
the
They do.
protection? They do,
Yeah,
and
they
you
the
leave
holes are big
them.
enough. I leave them on. I leave everything on because I've found if I start pruning them off to tidy them up, well, whenever I do it, I'm actually cutting off the photosynthetic engine of the tree. So leaving them on in the early years for me is essential because they need every bit of help they can get. It doesn't make them into
Mm.
forked trees. The center bud, sorry, the apical bud still dominates. But if they feel like it, adding a few branches sticking out, I don't do anything. And I was talking to Derek from Burnwood, who's, one of my big suppliers, and he said, yeah, just you can cut them if they stick outside the mesh. You can always cut them back by half, but leave them on for the first few years. They thicken the stem up, they make everything grow quicker. So it's
Okay.
messy. It doesn't look tidy, but it makes the tree healthier.
Okay.
And that's
So
the point.
so there you go. You are planting your whips, you're putting them right away in the protection.
Yeah.
You are letting them go. When do you first actually start pruning them? How many years?
Well, as I say, the blossom comes off from the first season of blossom. So this coming spring, I'll be cutting the blossom. I
Do
know
you
that's not,
just Are you just
I cut
scratching
them off
them
with a
off with your
blade.
fingers? With a
No,
blade?
no, a blade stuck on the end of a bamboo cane, which then
Oh,
reaches down and cuts. Yeah, it's
oh,
laborious, but I've got to
wow.
do it. I don't use any hormones, but they mostly just knock off if you get them before they open, they knock off very easily. That's
And your
really
goal
important.
there, the goal there is you obviously don't want the tree to fruit for the first, what, 2 years. You're trying to say no fruiting. Is that why you do
Well,
it?
yeah, I mean, the reason I'm doing it is actually the hormonal profile of the tree. What happens is that the root system of a tree, especially when it's young, it produces cytokinin, which is the lifeblood of growth and vitality for the branches and the buds in the future. But when they're very young, the root system is tiny compared to the rest of the tree, especially if they're pot grown. So the cytokinin hormone is actually very low, but the auxin hormone, which is in all the flower buds and in the bud tips, is dominant. So you would imagine, well, that sounds okay because auxin makes buds grow and everything works. But what happens is the auxin level gets so high that it actually inhibits the growth of the cytokinin in the roots, which means what happens
Oh,
is the roots die off and your tree dies within a year of planting.
oh, goodness. Okay.
And you don't see it in modern books. I mean, this is something you could mention. I don't know, but in the old gardening books, they always say how important it is to rub out or cut off flower buds from young trees for the first few years to present death of branches or the tree. I've never seen that in
So,
modern books.
can I rephrase that just to make sure I understood correctly? We know
Yeah,
that I always talk about how auxin hormones, they're kind of bossy. They take over. So when
yeah,
you're letting the auxins go nuts, well, this is partly why with other types of pruning, you snip the tips of young trees because you're taking out the
yeah,
auxins. So you want other, buds along the trunk to sprout so you got a
mm,
structure for your tree.
yeah,
So you're saying, and to be honest, from our apple trees, we didn't get a lot of blossoms in the first couple of years, but you're saying
no,
the blossoms also have auxin. And so by knocking
yeah.
off the
In the
blossoms, yeah.
Yeah, the auxin actually forms in the seeds. Once if you let the seeds form inside the fruits, which they often
Oh,
do, the auxin level of the seed is really high. And what happens is that auxin then permeates, it actually switches off all the branch development and the tree just halts because it's what you've got is a very mature piece of wood from a tree that's grafted onto a young rootstock. So it behaves like it's an adult tree on a very young rootstock. But if you allow that to happen, it actually self-destructs a lot of particularly with cherries and stone fruit. They're particularly bad for that,
okay.
and
Okay, let's
sometimes,
go.
yeah,
I'm just gonna go back. I'm just backtracking back to
yeah, that's
apples,
okay.
just because my brain is in apples. Okay.
Yeah,
So we're balancing out, like from when I first learned from my very first teacher, he was so lovely, and he said, look, by pruning, he's saying what you're saying, his approach is different. He says, we want to remove part of the upper part of the tree so that it's balancing it out. So we want the tree to put its energy in the lower part. So that's why we
Yeah,
are giving it a whip cut, because that's one thing. It's taken away a whole bunch of auxins. It's saying to
yeah,
the tree, you look, you've got lots of extra energy, honey, put it in your root system.
yeah,
So that's the traditional orcharding approach. You're just
yeah,
doing it a little differently. You're knocking off the blossoms, but
yeah.
you're leaving the tree alone. So other than knocking off or cutting off the blossoms,
Hmm.
when would you start shaping the tree?
Okay, well, the main shaping starts because these trees have got a center leader, usually at least one main, sometimes they have two,
Yes.
sometimes they
Yes.
fork, and I let them have, if they want to have two, I let them have two, particularly with the stone fruit, because I
Okay.
think it makes them stronger.
Okay.
So, but that's just my own personal approach. And normally by year five, I start doing some pruning, but I really do the absolute minimum of pruning in the first few years, which is why, if I plant 1,000 trees, my main worry is getting the blossom off and not pruning the trees. The first 5 years, really, it's about getting them established. I might do some watering in the summer, but I'm not pruning,
Okay, so
because
the on
these
the
are,
huge plus side is it's going to have a lot of photosynthesis because it's going to have a lot of leaves,
that's right. Yeah, a
right?
lot
So
of
that's a
leaf area
plus.
index. Yeah,
For and you guys are a damp climate that what I would see would be the minus side would be wouldn't the crowded canopy collect fungal diseases, fungal spores,
yeah.
dry out, to have trouble drying out?
I think if we were looking at a garden situation, the soil profile in a garden is completely different. And how do I know that? Well, because I've planted the same trees in gardens near to the orchard. I put a custard apple in a garden. What would it be? 3 miles away, in a place called Amersham, very close to the farm. And that tree has grown incredibly quickly on MM 106, actually. It's behaved completely differently to the one in the orchard, which is much smaller. Interestingly, they fruited about the same amount, but they've grown differently.
What rootstocks are in the orchard?
In the orchard, well, that custard apple was also MM 106. So both trees were on the same rootstock, but they were
Okay.
in different types of soil. The soil in the garden was enriched with mushroom compost, and it had it just had a lot more nitrogenous material. In the
Mm-hmm.
orchard, as you know, we don't apply any fertilizers.
Yeah.
Get the rock dust and the seaweed, and that's it. So
Yeah.
it's the way I see pruning. This is just my own opinion.
Yeah.
Is it's a bit like a coin. On one side, on one face of the coin, you've got pruning, and on the other side, you've got nutrition.
Yeah.
And if your nutrition is very nitrogenous and very plentiful, then the way you prune will have to be different, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. Wow. Okay, just give me a second. I'm just going to get my head around that. Okay. Yeah. So year five, okay. So far, you are not seeing a lot of fungal diseases. I have a beautiful shot of the orchard. I love it because it shows, the protection you've put on the trunks.
Yeah,
Um, and but if you look at the picture, you would think, okay, the air circulation, it's not like big and open in those trees, but
no.
you don't have fungal disease issues there.
We don't have fungal diseases and we don't have pests. I mean, this is one of the
Right.
breakthrough discoveries I think I've made,
Yeah.
which is that the nutrition
Yeah.
controls not just the pruning, but it controls the pest disease, the flavor, the yield, the blossom count.
Yes.
Everything that you kind of worry about, it pivots around how you feed the trees and what the plants do with that food.
Yeah.
So you
So,
can't easily extract, you can't say, sorry, you can't easily say, well, let's just focus on pruning without considering also what else are you doing to that tree nutrition wise.
but the other blessing that you have there is land that was not overused in any purpose, like for any other purpose. I think you told me that the quality of the land was so great. And
Yeah, it's good
also
soil.
no other orchards nearby with diseases. Am I right? Like,
Well, there are existing trees, and there are no, I mean, there's nothing within, I would say, half a mile. There are no other apple trees. Although there are, interestingly, we have found now we're not cutting the hedges as much. There are wild crab apples in the
yes,
hedgerows.
you showed me. I loved that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
those guys are
I, I
survivors.
I don't think that we would say we're in some sort of quarantine area because
Mm-hmm.
most of the problems like fungi would come, rusts and bugs can come in. I do think our trees are incredibly disease proof because of the high Brix value, the high secondary plant metabolites.
Now, another thing that you mentioned, you're planting like hundreds of trees right now.
Yeah,
You can plant throughout the winter over there, am I right?
we
Unless
can.
it's, yeah.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, in an ideal world, we do everything before the winter solstice because the soil's still warm. Every year,
Oh,
there's a great saying in Britain. You probably have it in Canada. As the days lengthen, the cold strengthens, and it really
oh,
happens in the UK. That really kicks off, and we've just seen that first week of
yeah.
January, really low temperatures. Every
Oh,
year. So these old
okay.
adages, yeah.
So, so you try and plant before winter. I like that solstice because the soil is warmer. But you're still planting dormant trees, even though they're potted, right? They're dormant.
Oh yeah, yeah, very dormant. Yeah.
So why are they giving you plants in pots? Isn't that a lot harder to ship and carry? Why don't you just get bare root?
Well, we've got a big bare root order coming in as well, but the particular
Oh,
supplier that we used for the
yeah,
first 800 trees is a pot. He's a guy who grows in pots, and he grafted them for us, and he
right.
can graft them in February
Oh,
and
oh,
then
I
had them
see.
ready for the autumn for us.
I
But he doesn't
see.
grow bare root. But whereas the other nurseries, Keepers and Walcott and RV Rogers that we use, they're all bare root nurseries, and their orders are now literally coming in this coming week because they've been very late in lifting some of their crops
Oh,
because
okay.
of the weather.
Who is the one you're getting the potted from?
Bernwoad, Bernwode, one of the most fantastic nurseries you'll ever come across. Rescued so
Really?
many Canadian and American apples, yeah,
Oh.
and brought them to Britain, yeah.
And are all of these guys do they sell to the public or only just to
No,
big
they
big
sell to everybody.
they
They
sell to
don't sell
everybody
internationally, but they sell obviously within the UK.
within the
Yeah,
UK? Okay, it's
Bernwoad, I
good.
mean,
I'll check those guys out because I have a list on my website of like some of the top nurseries in the UK, and I'm not sure that I have those ones, so I'm going to check.
to be honest, I know obviously you've visited Matthews and
Yes,
Frank Matthews are very good too. But in terms of, if you're looking for rarity, then some of these other nurseries are phenomenal
better and
and are
even.
responsible really for a big chunk of the trees I've got, which are really rare because I plant a lot of
Wow.
the missing trees,
Great. Love
um,
it.
which which used to be, the commercial sort of reliable trees, and then they've just quietly been deleted from Britain. So we've been replanting a lot of them.
Wow. Okay. All right. So year five is, we're thinking apple trees right now.
Yeah,
You might start pruning. So you're doing minimal pruning in general, certainly in the first 5 years. After that, what are you doing? Are you doing any pruning or just leaving it be or just what are you doing?
we are pruning. We are pruning in the summer mainly, so mainly August. And it's a case of branch removal where necessary. If trees have got too high, they stops at about 4.5 meters with long arm pruners.
Hmm.
And the thing also worth mentioning is we have an effect which is known as wind pruning because the orchards that we're planting are very high up. They're 600 feet above sea level, which in the UK
Hmm.
would be near the top of where you should be planting orchards. I mean, most books would say below 400 feet. I don't know whether you prefer feet or meters, but
I like
you know,
feet. I like both, but whatever. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what your preference is, but 200 and something meters above sea level is pushing it really for a lot of the trees. And so the point about that is the environment itself almost has a coastal effect on the trees. If you go to the coast in the UK and you look, especially Cornwall, you look at the trees, they're all leaning over and they're almost wizened. We don't
Mm.
quite get to that. We get fairly close to it, and it's a sort of pinching effect on the growth, which you
Wow.
don't get in the lowland areas. You don't get that in the Thames Valley or down in Kent or in the west, or even in the eastern areas. But in the Chilterns, you do get it. So it makes
Hmm.
trees very fruitful, but it doesn't make
Mm.
them produce a lot of extension growth. They
Oh.
don't have this long internode between the buds, the
Oh.
axillary buds. So everything's much shorter growing anyway. And of course, with the fact that we're not feeding them with nitrogenous feed, they
Yep.
don't put on. I mean, I've got very, very little to prune off. It's not that
Oh,
I'm a lazy
okay.
pruner. It's not that I'm thinking, oh, I don't really like pruning or I'm going to try and avoid it. They just don't have to prune much. Whereas if I go to the Thames Valley and I look at apples, they grow enormous. They grow a meter a year of growth that then has to all become pruned off because they grow differently
Mhm.
there.
Okay, hang on one second. Okay, hang on.
I mean, I brought something from the new orchard to show you just for fun. I don't know
Hmm.
whether you can see it.
Yeah,
Can you see what this is?
yeah. What is
Yeah,
it? A
this
rock?
is it is a rock. It's a piece of chalk, okay, which is the bedrock of the Chilterns. The Chilterns sits on this white rock is actually, I would say, the principal reason why we get the kind of growth we do, because we get very calcium dominated growth, not nitrogen dominated. And you only get
Hmm.
that really where you have a free supply of calcium in the bedrock. You
Right.
know, in the Thames Valley, where it's mainly clay with chalk very, very deep down or gravel, you tend to get this long extension growth.
Oh, sorry, Cliff is just coming in. He knows I'm on the phone.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm going to backtrack again for one second because you said that in the UK, when you are about 600 feet above sea level, they don't even recommend you planting. Is that due to
no.
wind? Why?
Wind, cold, very, very high levels of cold, shorter growing season, I think in general.
Compared to us here, like,
Yeah, I know. I know.
so that's kind of wimpy. Like if we can grow out apple trees in Canada, maybe means you need different varieties.
Well, we've got varieties which are very tough. We haven't got,
Yeah.
but it's interesting if you look at the map of the UK, most of the UK growing areas are not as high as 600 feet up. They're
Oh,
much lower.
really? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, even in the Highland, I've got a book which is it's a pamphlet from the Caledonian Horticultural Society in Scotland, and they used to have an annual kind of conference where people would send all their fruit in, and the gardeners would supply a description of the garden, including the height above sea level. And I didn't find a single one. This was back in the 19th century, but I didn't find a single one that was higher than 600 feet.
Okay.
So it's quite, yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, it's quite interesting how that affects pruning.
Okay, so back to pruning. So you're describing a situation that's quite unique. You've got wind, the
Mm,
wind is doing some of your work for you,
yeah,
and
definitely.
you've got a certain type of really great soil with lots of calcium in it. But on the other
Yeah,
hand, you're not giving it a lot of fertilizer. So
no.
if you were to decide to plant an orchard somewhere in the United States or Canada,
Hmm.
would you decide to do this exact same thing, or are you always going to customize how you plant your trees to what is the environment you're planting them in?
I think what I would do if I was planting in the US or Canada or anywhere is the first thing I would study is what varieties do well in the local area. I think that's much more important than fiddling around with the protocol. And I'd obviously be very mindful of any known susceptibilities to disease. So what
Gotcha.
grows well, what's very, very resilient, what shows in whether it's historical or modern, what has an inbuilt genetic resistance to the particular pests. And then obviously, we go out into the ecological approach which we use, which would help with a lot of the pests. But I don't think I would vary my planting or my volgards or my staking. I think I'd stick with most of that. I
Okay.
think it's a pretty universal system actually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, next where I wanted to go with this is the idea because I visited Wisley in the UK, and I saw these absolutely beautiful old cider apple trees that have been planted
Yeah.
in the standard style, where the
Yeah, I've
lowest
seen them.
branches are 6 feet up. So I'm 6 feet tall, and looking
Yeah,
up, I
yeah,
could see there were no lower branches.
sure.
So, my first question was, oh my gosh, how do you even harvest this?
Yeah.
And the answer apparently was, well, you wait for the apples to fall and then I guess you ferment them or something because I can't imagine it's safe to eat them right off the ground. I don't know. But my other question is, if I wanted to plant a standard apple tree in that style, I would probably need a good rootstock that is a standard rootstock, nice and
Yeah.
vigorous, or on a seedling. But would I do a
Yeah.
whip cut? Would I? once you get, obviously, you're going to remove all the branches until the one's 6 feet up because you
Mm,
probably have sheep and maybe even deer down below.
yeah.
Um, but then what do you do? Do you know much about standard pruning a standard fruit tree?
Well, what we do grow our trees as a standard because we have a cleared stem of, remember, 5 feet, 1.5 meters, and then our branch structure starts above that. So we start not at 6, but at 5, not one,
Hmm.
not
Okay.
1.8, but at 1.5, and we operate on the system that I've outlined, which is the narrow canopy system. If you wanted to have an open centered tree, then yes, you could, maybe half a meter above the end of your guard, you could maybe hack it back, cut it back gently, and then encourage side shoots to form. It depends what style of tree you want.
But you said, okay, so you could keep it clear up to 5 feet, but you said you're not pruning at all, but removing
No,
side branches is
no, we
pruning.
don't cut anything out. We don't cut anything out. We allow the branches to continue upwards. The main trunk of the tree carries on up and acts as a central spine.
Okay, but you don't, and the picture of the trees that you have, I didn't see any lower branches going outwards. I saw, well, obviously you've got your tube going around the tree. Maybe that suppresses
Yeah.
growth.
No, I mean we don't. We do take when we get to year 5. In fact, we did a video of this on YouTube. We've got a long video and we've got a short video on pruning trees, which you
Okay,
can have a look at. It's one of the most recent videos actually.
okay,
And in those videos, we explain what happens when the trees start growing into each other and how we shape those trees. So we take the branches back, we walk around the outside of the tree. I actually do a long form video showing the pruning of an apple tree. I go right round the tree. I take out all the crossing branches. I take out all the internet connected branches with next door. I leave a separation of about 30 centimeters between each tree.
gotcha.
And that is how we approach it. It's more like pruning gigantic shrubs than
Yeah,
pruning large trees. That's more the approach, and we
and
do get
mhm.
a good crop.
Yeah, no, definitely you do. You get a beautiful quad. Okay, so this makes sense to me. And here's the other thing that I was thinking. Maybe because you don't have any branches or many branches below 5 feet,
Mm.
by the time the energy goes up that high, you're not going to have like and you're removing crisscross branches. You're
Yeah,
going
yeah, we
in
do
there.
all the
You're
usual.
not just leaving it to, you're removing
No,
rubbing branches, crisscross
yeah,
branches. You are shortening branches if they're bashing into the neighbor. So you are taking
yeah,
care of these. You're
yeah.
allowing them to let oxen dominate with the branches going upward. I guess
Mm.
harvesting is going to be a little fiddly because you have to fight your way into the canopy to do your harvesting.
Well, a bit, but the system that we've got is to promote as much of the fruit on the outside of the canopy. So the bearing canopy, really, the ideal for me is to have most of the crop within the first sort of 15 to 20 centimeters of the canopy edge.
Okay.
I'm not looking for, I'm not really expecting much fruit to be held within the center of the tree. So that space is occupied purely by leaves or new branches that develop out. Because what we're really doing is operating in the long term of what's called renewal pruning. So eventually, what you have to do with this system is you have to remove certain branches, which have
Yeah.
obviously got to a point where they're not producing anything anymore. And using loppers, you cut them out, and you start to encourage new branches to grow through. But
Yeah.
that's not going to happen really until you're into year 8 to year 10. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
trees are at year 8, and I have done it a little bit, but
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised how the trees haven't grown as quickly as I wanted. I think
And
because we don't
partly it could
irrigate.
be because it's so high above sea level because there's so
I
much
think
wind.
so.
Uh,
Yeah, the rootstock choice. I mean, a lot of things, we made a mistake with the quince rootstock on the pears. That was
mm,
not successful because quince C is too dwarfing. I don't know if you have quince C in Canada
Canada,
or
I
the
don't
US,
I
but
don't know.
what your
Wow.
rootstock
Okay, this is
pears.
starting to make more sense to me. Now, how old do you think those trees will get? We're talking about the apple trees again. How
How
old?
old?
Yeah. How old do you think
Oh,
it's going to be productive for another 20 years or more?
oh yeah. I mean, their peak production starts at sort of year 10, year 12, and it just goes on for 50, 60 years. They have a
Great.
very, very long lifespan. And particularly if they're pruned that way, because you're not really allowed them to get too weighty. You know, a lot of people allow their trees to reach out at 45-degree and have these great big branches which eventually crack and fall off. They just don't
Right,
prune their trees enough. There's this
right.
great illusion in British orchards that, old-fashioned orchards were made of gigantic trees. But
Yeah.
it's actually an illusion because they're the trees that you now see that have survived years of unpruned sort of care. You know, they've just been left to grow. What you don't see is how the orchard would have looked when it was first planted, which was a much more
Which was, sorry, you just cut out. So what they would have looked like would be, they would have been pruned.
smaller trees
Yeah,
and
smaller.
many more trees,
Yeah,
much more pruned. Yeah, much
yeah,
closer
much more
planting. I'm
pruned.
really, yeah.
Okay. In apparently I'm sorry I didn't see the video yet. Sarah, who wrote me an email, has said you use anvil pruners for your pruning rather than bypass pruners.
I use both. I
You use
use
both.
anvil for larger branches, and I use bypass for small branches. Yeah, I use both. I mean, both
Y-
cut the wood pretty well. The
Yeah.
anvil one I've got is on the long arm. I mean, the problem with the long arm, I've said it on the video, the long video. The problem with the long arm pruner is you can't be so precise.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can't be so, you reach up and you think you're cutting it diagonally, but are you really?
No.
And but I have to be realistic, and I've got 50 trees to prune, and
Yeah.
they seem okay. It's not perfect, but that's the compromise, and I'm not worried because the trees are healthy, so they recover
Oh
very
yeah.
well.
I love pole pruners. That's what I call them. I
Yeah,
love them so much. And I know that it's not the precise cut I'd love it to be, but I'm just so happy that I don't have to climb a ladder. So,
I do use obviously steps as well, but
oh, do
yeah,
you?
well, if
Ok-
if I need to, especially for harvesting,
Also, the other thing is silver pasture versus, oh, you don't have deer, right? You don't have a deer
we
problem
do
there.
have deer. No, we have lots of deer.
Oh, you do, but the
Yeah, we have a
protection
lot
that
of
you
deer. We have
provide is enough. And obviously they can't get the higher branches, the
no,
five
I mean
foot
anything
plus.
over 5 foot, yeah, and the muntjac and the fallow and all the other deers that we have there. We have about 3 or 4 species of deer that come into the orchards, and sometimes even in the big orchard they actually live there. So
Do
they
they
live
do
in the
some of
orchard.
your pruning for you? If there's any branches that
No, they do,
stick out
no,
from
they
the lower bits?
they don't. No, well, they haven't in the past. I mean, they can't reach them because
Yeah, but
everything's
if there's
too.
anything that pops out of the tube,
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah, they probably do nibble them a little
they're
bit.
they're
Yeah, they
they're
do.
nibbling. They're pruning for you, those guys.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
and the
very
sheep
nice
do
of
as well.
them. And
They
the
don't
sheep
do a
do is,
lot. They,
well, but that makes
yeah,
sense. So here, this is why it makes sense to me. When I look at your orchard, I'm like, why are there not more lower branches? And I think it's because people are nibbling, or non-people, beings are nibbling
yeah,
on them. They're doing
yeah.
your pruning for you, and you're not even paying them a penny.
I know,
Isn't that
but
nice
we
of them? But you
but
are
we do
actually,
let them.
yeah, you let
Yeah,
them come and
we look
play.
after them.
You do look after them. Okay. What is the difference between silvopasture and I don't know, permaculture or whatever? Do you call what
Is
you do
that?
silvopasture?
I think we would be classed. Most of what we do is silvo pasture because it's woodland and meadow together with grazing. But we do have one area of permaculture at one end of the
Yes.
small orchard, which is
Yes.
in an understory crop of red currants, gooseberries, and rhubarb.
Yes, I remember seeing that. So
That's not
those are
grazed.
totally silvopasture just has to do with the fact that you're letting wildlife or not wildlife, domesticated animals hang out.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the idea. It's grazed. It's grazed land with trees. It's a very
Grazed lands
productive
with
system.
trees. Yeah,
I think
grazed
so.
lands with trees. Yep.
Yeah,
John Kemp would love that, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's all he loves that kind of stuff. All right, let's see. Oh, here's the other question. This was a cool question. You're covering up your trunks with the tube. Do you still need to
yeah.
paint the trunks? You don't need to paint
No.
underneath there. Yeah,
We
there's so
don't
much
we don't use
protection.
we're not allowed to use any paints and we don't want to.
You don't want to. There's actually,
No.
I was recommended a company, I think it's IV Organics or something like that, and they do um, biodynamic tree paste, but it's not, they sell it and it's somehow, I don't know how they make it, but it's paint, but it's all
Mm.
biodynamic. I don't know. how they do it.
What's it
But
for? What do they
it's
use it
for
for?
people who want to paint the trunks. Like, in our park, we paint our trunks and we have used just leftover house paint or whatever. But I think it's got a nutritional base as well for the tree, but it's protecting the tree from sunburn. It's
Oh, I
deterring
see.
insects
Yes.
from crawling up the tree and all that stuff. So
Mm,
I've got some to try. I'll try that this year just for fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have sunburn problems in the UK, even
Not
in the
enough sun,
hottest.
maybe that's why.
Not enough sun. Well, we had a very hot summer, but even then, it wasn't enough.
You
It's
know
just we
what?
don't get close.
I look at the pictures from my recent trip and it was beautiful every single day. And I
Yeah,
lived in the UK for 11 years. I forgot that the weather there is terrible. And I keep saying to Cliff, we got to move back to the UK at some point, spend 6 months
yeah,
or something. It's so much
yeah.
fun there. And like I can't even remember what it was like when it rained all the time. So
No,
we
we
got
don't.
so
We
lucky.
get we get weird weather, don't we? I mean, I don't know about Canada. Maybe Canada is the same, but Britain's weather is bizarre.
Oh, right now
We've
here
just
it's
had.
crazy. It was 10 degrees Celsius yesterday. This is the middle of winter. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
icy all the
warm.
time because it gets warm and then it's minus 20 and then it's like icy
Wow.
walking everywhere. It's been nuts. Really not good. But
No. How are
yeah.
the trees? How are your trees coping?
I don't know. If I could sit and have a conversation with them, I think they would not be happy. Our trees, knock on wood, in the park are doing great. They're all older as well. Like we have one young tree, a young peach tree. It's a seedling, so that's hopefully going to be a little tough.
Yeah,
But knock on wood, they're doing great. But only in the spring, I guess we'll see what's going on. Nobody's started to bud or anything. But like seriously, a
that's
day
good.
of 10 degrees that's nuts. So who
Yeah,
knows? Yeah, who knows? Okay, let me see if there was any other questions for you. Yeah. Yeah, so again, I'm kind of stuck in the sense I've reached out to Jim at Winsley because I would love to know about because I'm going to put in my book, which I'd love for you to look at, but I know you're so busy and it's not ready yet. It'll be ready and the first draft will be ready for people to look at this coming Friday. I'm so stressed getting this done, but I don't know if you have time over the weekend or something to have a look, but um,
yeah,
I want to have a section on standard trees because a lot of people write me and they say, "Oh, we
yeah,
have a serious problem with deer, but I would like to plant fruit trees." And maybe they
yeah,
don't want to have a big, huge fence or something like that. So my question
yeah,
is, would you opt for a feather, or and then just remove the side branches, or would you use a young whip? And like also talking to you, what would you do with pruning? Like, I have a picture of one in particular of the cider trees. The air circulation was very good. It was as if they let it go to 6 feet. They
hmm
didn't use the central leader strategy, but it wasn't just a big tangle of branches at the top. It was good air circulation. But I don't
Okay.
know if there is a standard pruning technique, UK
Well,
style.
I think, well, it's difficult to summarize this because I'll tell you what we do. When we get whips, it's easy because they can go in their tube, we can let them grow. We can then eventually stop them at whatever height we want. We can develop them once they've grown up. I mean, once they get out of the tube and they grow side branches, we can play with them, get them to
Yeah.
do all sorts of things. We can use the mesh around the edge to tie the branches to support them in the first few years. We do a lot of that sort of
Hmm.
stuff with tree ties. So there's a
Oh.
lot of sort of handling and things like that that helps. But your question is about feathers. Well, we get quite a lot of our stone fruit as bare root trees. And the bare root trees almost always have a lot of side growth on. And we're planting them in the winter. We can't prune them in the winter because of fire blight and canker, etc. If I try and do it,
Mm-hmm.
I've killed trees in the past trying to do it. So I can't cut anything off. So we
Mm.
can't put a green tubular guard around them because the branches are in the way. So what we
Mm.
have to rely on is the outer guard of mesh to do all the work, which is a bit of a
Mm.
risk, but that's what we do. So we leave all the feathers on for the first year
Mm.
inside the bigger outer mesh.
Oh,
Leave it all on.
really?
It's stuffed inside. We don't cut anything off, even if it looks untidy. We just cram it in. Then in the following summer, if it's looking unhappy in this, because sometimes they self edit, they take out, they lose their own branches, which is good actually. They do that.
Yeah.
But if they don't self-edit and they start throwing up lots of multiple shoots from the sides and they're all going up together, I will then reach down with loppers or maybe even take the mesh out. Sometimes I open the mesh up from the bottom and reach up and just cut off a few with
Yeah.
secateurs and take them out, or any suckers that are coming up from the ground. I always do that. So
Yeah.
I'll do that in the first year to try and get rid of some of that burden of side growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm
Yes.
not really, I had quite a long sort of period where I was scared of pruning some of my really rare trees, like my Aylesbury prunes.
Yes.
And I ended up having too many long, thick branches coming from the sides
Yes.
and then having to remove some. But one of the things I would say, this is a long rambling answer, I do know that,
Well, it's a great answer. I'm loving every minute of
but
it. Yeah.
the thing was, we suddenly, for some reason, we had fireblight. We had an attack of fireblight on one of these trees, and I had to remove a whole section of the tree. But because it had produced a branch from lower down that I'd left
Oh,
on, that
you
was
have
my
another
recovery
trunk.
branch. I
Yeah.
had another trunk. So
Yeah.
sometimes this sort of laissez-faire, let's leave things alone for a long time, see what happens, kind of works in your favor because when you've got fire blight, which is the only disease we've ever really encountered in the orchard that is serious, and we have very little fire blight. And when we get
Yeah.
it, it's always the same. It always attacks the stone fruit if it does attack. Not pruning them seems to be, and not allowing them to fruit, are the two strategies that work very well
Hmm.
on fire blight, apart
No,
from the
wait a
usual
minute. I
protocol.
think I'm getting mixed up. For me, Fireblade is it only goes to apples and pears, but with stone fruits, it's
No,
a different
and
kind of
stone fruits.
blight.
Well, we get canker. We're never too sure if it's fire blight or a bacterial canker, to
It's
be
probably
honest.
bacterial. Those are notorious for bacterial canker. Okay.
Yeah, but it's a bacterial disease anyway, for
Yeah,
sure.
totally bacterial. It's totally bacterial. Oh, I've seen it anyways. Yes.
So
So,
yeah,
so
that's
what
what we
you're
do.
saying, okay, so let's imagine, to me, what I'm hearing is a whip is better. It
Yeah,
is
it is
easier.
better. It is better. We're really hoping that the next delivery of stone fruit, the cherries from
Yeah.
RV Rogers, are going to be mainly whips and not
Yes.
feathered whips. But the
Yeah,
thing is,
because
we
it's an
have very
extra
little.
complication. Yeah.
It is. But we kind of have to just get what we get, because it's so
Yeah.
hard to source. And a lot of our trees come from one grower, and that's it. It's them or nobody.
Yeah. So I'm trying to
So
think the
very limited.
science, if you have a whip and you've put it in your tubes are 5 feet tall, right? So even
Yeah.
if it's a little guy,
The actually they're actually 4 foot tall, are
so
tubes,
if your whip
but
is 3 feet, you don't even see anything there. I
that's
guess in
right.
some, yeah,
Yeah.
little guy.
But most of our
Okay,
whips that we're just planting, you can see because they stick out of the top.
they
So
do. Okay.
yeah,
So
mostly.
so then the whip, the auxin hormones is going to go, it's going to reach up because it needs the energy. If you don't prune that for 5 years, I think there'll be minimal side branching. I think that's ideal. And then if you want a standard tree, and I'll ask Jim at Wisley this as well, but if you
Yeah,
then wait until it hits the 5 feet or 6 feet, wherever you want it, and then do your cut, then
yeah,
you're going to start to get some side branching. That makes sense to me. Whereas if it's a feather, you've got a bunch of auxin hormones in the different branches,
yeah,
and it's,
yeah. You've got to do some interfering. You've got to do some
yeah.
pruning back, I think. But
So
to
I
be
think
honest, the
whip,
tree, yeah,
yeah.
the trees
Hmm.
want ultimately to have a big trunk and a few branches on top. That's their preferred option. They don't really want to have multiple stems going up from the ground. They
Hmm.
tend to edit out a lot of their lower branches anyway over the years. If you look at
Hmm.
trees that are kind of
Hmm.
neglected, they don't have that many. They have a few, but they don't have that many side growths.
This is
So
so
they do tend
interesting.
to, yeah, they do clear themselves out a bit.
Okay, well, you have been so generous with your time for me. Thank you for helping me to get my head around this, and I share this video, the video or whatever with Sarah. Um, I
I
guess I'll
get a
stop
copy.
recording. Yeah,
I get
sure. Why not? Yeah. Do you just want the audio or the video as well? Whatever you want.
send. I won't publish it. Don't worry. It's
You
private.
can if
But
you want. I mean, it's just an
no,
informal
I wouldn't
chat.
because it's not. We haven't edited it, but no, it's nice to have a record
Yeah, no, I
of
think
it.
this
To
was a
me,
really interesting conversation, and it made me think, especially with the book that I'm writing, where like the first part of the book I'm talking about. You got to look at your location. Yes, of course, plant hardiness zone is important, but what's your microclimate like? And that's exactly what you and I were talking about, is the
Yeah,
microclimate. How, how high up are you?
yeah,
Um, and what I also got out of it, I like what you say. First and foremost, look for the varieties, and you said that in my podcast.
yeah,
Look for the varieties that have thrived traditionally where you are. But
yeah,
well, I guess what I find thought-provoking is at the moment in my book, and I still think it's appropriate because it's mostly for backyard growers, I give them a bunch of different options. Do you want a freestanding tree? Do you want an espalier fruit tree? Do you even want to try maybe high density plantings, which
yeah,
I would love to try. If we were allowed to plant more trees in the park, I would totally do that. Um,
yeah,
but what I got out of this conversation is how you approach it may also be related to what kind of property you're growing it on. What is the soil like? What is the high, you've
yeah,
got the
yeah,
wind helping you doing some of your pruning, and you've got deer and animals helping you do some of the pruning in the lower branches. You don't see
yeah,
it
yeah.
happening, but it's happening.
Do you